We have only 35 chambers. There is no 36.
I know that. But I want to create a new chamber.
And what would that be?
I think Shaolin techniques should be available to all. So then, that's my idea for a new chamber. To teach the martial arts to the people. Anybody.
All right, welcome back to another episode of My 3 Cents. So, today I want to talk about something I watched. It was a Martin Luther King documentary. I took notes on it because a lot of us, when we're taught history, a lot of us don't go back and research. I would probably say almost 95+% of us take what they gave us. We were too busy to really dive into it like that. So, we ran with it. We didn't see the harm in it. So we passed the classes or whatever the case was. And that's where we at, right? So it was really interesting because there was a lot of things I had heard about Martin Luther King before. You've probably heard me speak about him before, talk about how I did not agree with his movement. And a lot of people don't understand and overstand that he did not agree with the perceived movement, right? It's very important to understand that when Martin Luther King first came out, he himself, as a quote unquote activist, he was kind of being set up from the beginning, right? This was a grooming of sorts, okay? This was another, he was following his father's footsteps. There's other things that my spirit showed me a little bit about him and watching his energy of the past and him and his family and watching them in church in Atlanta, right? Preacher in Atlanta. I'm not going to really touch on that too much, but those of you that know probably know what I'm talking about, right? Preacher in Atlanta, okay? Some funny business going on. And it's a shame because, black people from as far back as I can see have been somewhat deifying other black people. It's just always like that for some reason. We keep worshiping. It's funny that the black man or woman won't accept that they are the God, but they will constantly worship each other, right? We're not really picking up on that. You'll accept a celebrity as a higher than you, but at the same time, you're putting yourself at a lower state. You got to see that, right? So, we always do that. Even somebody that, like I said, criminal, somebody that's been destroying lives, whatever the case may be, whatever their life path was, here's my point. That person dies or something happens, and it's like, we got them on T-shirts with angel wings. We're just not realistic about what's happening. We need to become actual. We got to get out of this illusionary fog that we are constantly in as black people. It is the weirdest thing to just keep watching. As time goes by, somebody like me who has been on the other side, I've, been in the street life, I've done this and that. All the way till now in 2021, it's like, there's still people doing that. And to those of us that know, we know that this is old, like eons old. People are still doing the same thing and they cannot perceive it because they have not made it through it. So it's a sad thing to witness, especially with your people. You want to see them do better because, this is your family. This is your spirit family. And so back to Martin Luther King. He was following his father's footsteps, right? And, he was the next up-and-coming preacher and whatnot and became an activist. We know the story of his father being arrested. We understand how that then connected them to the political game because it was the Kennedys who got his father out, and this was another political movement, which I spoke about before in a previous episode. I think it might have been a slavery episode. Bringing up the fact that, black people became Democrats, basically following Martin Luther King because he was set up to lead the people that way. Once he did that, they no longer wanted him in a position of power because now he has followers, right? Just like now, when you get too many followers or anything like that, they will not leave you alone. They will sign you to something and try to pay you. Have you ever seen somebody get 1 million followers and not sign anything and just say, I'm just popular? What's the big deal? Because that way they wouldn't be able to control your movement, therefore controlling your following. These things are masterful setups. Masterful. So, anyways, so with the MLK, which is also linked to Moloch, you might want to write that down. MLK is also Moloch. These are all energy plays, okay? If you study etymology, you know that you can remove the vowels. The vowels do not mean anything in these words. Remove the vowels, get the constant or the consonants, and you will see the concrete, what the word is actually consists of, what it's made of. So this is Moloch to MLK, all right? Vowels are interchangeable. They mean nothing, and you can just remove them if you want to see the meat of the word. So this is another code that's embedded in this thing that was at work, that was at play, okay? Now, Martin Luther King, right? I've told you before, this was not his birth name. So it's funny that we just ignore that and we sit and say Martin Luther King Day. Okay, who is that? How many people have looked up who that is? He's a German scientist. He had to do with things that had to do with Hitler and other ideologies that we are supposedly against. This was one connection that you can make to not capitalism, but socialism, and they did call him a communist. Now, Martin Luther King, Muhammad Ali, these guys back in the day were all referred to as communists by our government. A lot of people don't know why. I'm going to tell you why. Because just like I'm showing you now, this thing was a political setup to put certain people in power and then nudge them in certain directions. This is how they gain a following, but I don't want you to have your own mind. Okay? So, with Martin Luther King stepping up, getting the people together, going out here for his father, we know the story, right? They let him out. The Kennedys were Democrats. The Democrats did something for the blacks. This was proof to them that the Democrats were for the blacks, right? So this is all a part of the beginning of an agenda. Even to this day, they will tell you if you are not voting Democrat, you are not black. And Joe Biden himself said that. So we talk about racism, but I'm going to get to that. So back to MLK. He was in a position, the spotlight, being looked at as an activist, right? And he himself, which many people don't know, actually did believe that without guns, without money, and without means and influence, we had no chance for change. He that was his understanding, right? He wasn't just like this docile guy all about quietly walking around and getting hit in the head. So we got to stop accepting what they're giving us about these people and really kind of dive into it and let your spirit fill in the blanks, right? So come to find out, he was kind of taking a back seat to his own ideologies, okay, for the good of the movement, or what was perceived of what the movement should be, right? So they, when I say they, I mean Martin Luther King and the people that followed him trusted God. Now follow me. To them, to Martin Luther King, if you just read everything about what was going on during that time would show you that the God thing was like more so like a last resort thing. It was like, man, look, we can't go against them with arms. It was like, man, let's just try this approach. I mean, Gandhi, people talk about different people that were involved in these types of approaches, but you have to study them as well to understand why and when they took that approach. Their whole movement was not about that. Some of their movement was about force as well. So this is a misunderstanding. So this was kind of like their last hope, right? This was what we call faith. Now, the Bible tells you that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen. Now, you have to think about this. They're talking about the unseen. So we're already in the ether with this, right? They're telling you that faith is what hope is made of. And it's also looked at as the evidence of what we can't see. So you're kind of just giving yourself a comfortable place to sit until things change. Right? Now, somebody might say, well, what if you're having faith that things will get better and this and that? Well, watch this. If you're doing that, then you have to understand that you have also agreed that things are not good. There's no room for faith. If you make room for faith, you have also made room for a few other things that are directly associated. Hope, the unseen, imagination. Cool, if that's the route you want to take. But be conscious that that's what you're doing. Okay? So this was his approach, right? Faith. So this is the minister. Remember, he was a minister. So it wasn't just that he was an activist for the black people. It wasn't that at all. It was that he was a black person going through some things in the public eye. Hey, let's make this guy the spokesman for the black people. Who else? Right now. Okay? It's a crucial area, too, when you're talking about Atlanta, Georgia. It's a crucial area for black people in the country. Okay, so the way I'm looking at it is that faith was what he was kind of left with. Okay, and to me, this was just another version of, or still a version of, the religious division amongst black people. This is the same stuff. And it was almost like if you were black and Christian, you was going to rock with him no matter what. I'm not saying that he wasn't the one to rock with, but what I'm trying to show you is the blueprint of how they made it happen. Anybody can be catapulted to the top. That doesn't make him something you worship. Like, I don't get that. We're saying Martin Luther King Day when Martin Luther was a German scientist. Why don't we say the man's real name? Look it up if you don't know what his name is. His birth name. And we call him the Martin Luther King Jr. Come on, people. So this was kind of a setup. So, black people have always kind of worshipped a higher energy since the beginning of anything recorded or written down or shown on the walls, right? The hieroglyphics. We've always acknowledged the higher, what they refer to as God, because they think they got it that figured out to where they could name it. Not only that, it would only have 3 letters in the name. Not only that, but one of the letters is a vowel. So 2 letters, right? We've always worshipped that thing that was higher because, to me, that thing was always right next to us. We are next to the highest thing. So we've always, that's why it's hard to tell a black person that the God and Jesus stuff is not what they think. And they say, well, I feel it and I'm this and I'm that. And it's like, yeah, I get that. But you just don't understand what you're feeling. It's all you. You just said it yourself. You feel it. You feel it. Okay, still, you haven't left the body yet with anything you've said. So this religion stuff is very strong. Uh, so look, black people have always been susceptible to tricks dealing with spirituality. Just look at all the stuff we're involved in. We're everything from Seventh Day Adventists to every other religion, Masons. We have adopted, like some of us have adopted everything. There's black people in everything. Think about that. There's not any other culture, I believe, that is involved in everything, but when you go to each individual thing, I guarantee you find brown people in there somewhere. Guaranteed. That is a part of our innate connection with the great I am. You'll sit there and even say the great I am and still project that to be something else. It's kind of odd, especially at this point. So let's get back to Martin Luther. So um, let's talk about the Civil Rights Bill, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Okay, so we got to understand a lot of the stuff that they tell you happened for black people and because of black people was not that. Indeed, it was a black people freedom or something that ended up being a byproduct of what just happened. It was not meant for that to happen. That is a totally different thing. If I tried to hurt you and accidentally helped you, I don't think you should thank me. Right? So, I mean, you got to take this stuff with a grain of salt. You got to understand they're giving it to you a certain way. History is written by the victors. We know that. It's his story. It's whoever lived to tell the tale. We got to trust that or dive in. How do we go beyond books? How do we go beyond rhetoric? Right? You got to go inside self because you actually have all the answers through the genetic connections. You was there. Something in you was there. Show me how it wasn't. Then that tells me you don't understand cells. You don't understand genetics. You don't understand DNA. You must think you spontaneously came with your own DNA pack. Did your DNA line just start when you were born? I don't think so. So, in 1964, there was a Civil Rights Act, and in my opinion, it was because Kennedy died, right? Big Kennedy died. And this was like an homage. And they say, well, he really fought for such and such, so let's do this. Now, it ends up affecting directly the Negro. So what does the Negro think? They did that for us. Just like the Civil War, the civility wasn't for you. If it was, why they still treating you bad, brother? Why are you in the streets with signs right now if that was about you? And if that was about you and you believe that and you're in the streets with signs, how can you be involved with this type of system that you can't obviously pick a side on? Tough questions. So, during this time when they did look up the Civil Rights Act, please read this stuff. I'm not going to sit here and try to explain to you and read to you the words of this stuff. I'm not going to do it. Because if you know my podcast, you know that this is to make you get off your butt. You ain't going to leave my episode and go try to tell somebody something. See, I've put you in a position where you have to go and see if I'm telling the truth. You say, well, this sounds, I got to go check this out. So, right after that, Martin Luther King gets the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, this is another thing we look back and we say, man, Martin Luther King got the Nobel Peace Prize. but what you don't maybe understand and overstand is that, guess what? He didn't even know he was nominated. He actually found out at the same time the people found out, and they say, "Hey, man, you got to go such and such and accept this award they gave you." He said, "Oh," and when you again in his mind, it's like, and this is again my 3 cents. He is being swept up in a whirlwind. How do you say slow down now when this is what you've been preaching about? We have put you in a predicament, sir, in front of your people. So he didn't even know what the Nobel Peace Prize and him had to even do with each other at that time. That's big. So to me, you can say, okay, this is the real start of the setup. He knew when everybody else knew that he won this prestigious award. But again, this was piling on top of piling on top of piling because there's a point that needs to be made. There's people that need to be calmed down and taught to participate. And we need them to be on this side of things when the smoke clears. So this is how you do all that. And it's pretty sad, man, because he thought he was getting in there, man, so he could really have access to the government and change. But then he was kind of seeing it wasn't what he thought. And not only that, when the government didn't want his services anymore, do you guys realize that they created a special task force for Martin Luther King and his people? You guys don't understand the FBI and why this stuff was created. Oh, yeah. It's another attack on melanin. Look it up. Because they needed special police that could devote their time to things that the other police could not devote their time to. That was a part of this. So they followed Martin Luther King. And the sad thing is that they actually released all these documents, man. You can find this stuff. It's public information where they had to release everything that had to do with his case, his surveillance, everything. And it's pretty sad. And if you're a fan of him, don't look at it. But spoiler alert, I'm telling you now. So with the release of the surveillance and everything they had, they were sending him around. The press was on him. You got to understand, people. This was allowed to be like this. He's traveling. Now, the government started getting upset because it seemed like he was choosing his own route and kind of deviating from the plan. Now, this is how it's portrayed and plays out with the paperwork and just analyzing it with a clear mind and no bias, right? It kind of shows that they were upset with him, so they started trying to find anything they could to discredit him so that the black people would stop following him. So what did they do? They tapped all of his phones. They set up the hotel rooms before he would check in. They had bugs in the rooms. They already pre-planned what room they was going to send him to. It was a lot of stuff like that already set up. So don't even take your mind to where he got shot, right? At the hotel, right? Now, this is what I'm trying to tell you. So they released a lot of information and even audio of him actually talking. And he was saying things like he didn't believe, people in his crew was trying to warn him that the government was probably following them, tapping. And he said, well, they probably got other stuff to do. He didn't really buy into it. He wasn't really worried about it. He was chilling. And when I say chilling, He was chilling. They was getting prostitutes, male and female. They were having parties. They was getting faded. So it's important to understand and understand. Stop worshiping people. That's weird. Best thing you can do is raise yourself to a level to be worshiped by yourself. Stop worshiping other people. That's weird. We got to stop that. Raise yourself up to that level. That's the power in that. It's not to say, I'm better than the God they gave me from the Bible, man. Stop all that. It is the simple fact of raising yourself up, period. Why would you raise up anything else in this existence other than what you can control the most, which is self? So, I mean, this man and his crew, they was doing it big. Yeah. And the point of this was, look, it was to the degree that there was a white guy, I forget his name. He was involved with the government, with the FBI, and they made a compilation of MLK and his buddies having different sex parties. Just all kind of stuff. Drugs, alcohol involved, everything. They made a compilation of his audio and video. Because the problem was, at first they were getting video, but then they couldn't say, okay, who was saying what once they went in. They couldn't say, they didn't have audio. Well, first they had audio, right? So people would go in, but then the video was outside. So they would start to match up who they saw go in with the voices. There was this whole elaborate thing that evolved. And it grew around Martin Luther King and all these black people that was always together. And they even had people implanted with him. Just like the Black Panther movement and everything else that we think we have. There's people in there that they put in there because they are letting you have that, period. You run around with press and access and don't understand that they gave you access. So they made a compilation and they sent it to him and they sent it to his wife. Now, this is something they don't really talk about too much because I guess to blacks to this day, they're still trying to protect your mind with Martin Luther King. They want you to see him as that so that you can just, I don't know, stay in that place and never know the truth. I'm not sure. So that you can look at the person that did the most still died and nothing changed. I'm not sure, right? There's all kind of agendas and ideologies they can push and use with that. So she, and man, again, I'm reading her energy, her face, her demeanor, her words. I'm listening. I'm an empath as well, right? So she was just going along with her man. She was one of those. She was in a generation that was taught to go with her man, period. If he say he didn't do it, then you better not accuse him again. You see? That's that generation. So when you see her talking about it, you even see it on her. She's just like, well, I believe him, and I'm rolling with my man, little smirk. It's like, she one of those. I didn't know she was one of those. She one of those? See, that's the problem. That's why I say don't meet your heroes. Because they're not going to be what you thought, because you're not supposed to be worshiping anybody or putting anybody up higher than you anyway. And any celebrity claiming to be one, that's messed up. Because they know what they're doing to you psychologically. For them to claim to be what they are, everybody has to agree that you are less. Am I right or wrong? And you can say, well, not necessarily less. You lying, because they got access to things you don't have. There are places you're not. You're watching them and they're not watching you. Stop trying to build lies around the truth. So moving on. A lot of stuff came out. I don't want to spend too much time on that part. It is what it is. He's a man. Might have been a homosexual man. That's his business. Hey, Atlanta, right? I'm not saying everybody from Atlanta is homosexual. Obviously, come on. But what I'm saying is, come on. Don't be stupid. You got to read people's energy. You can't just listen to stuff. You got to tap into self. And it's not to go and make claims about anyone. It is not for that. It is for you. Everything you take in is for you. The only reason I do this podcast is I speak to people all the time. They tell me they get something from it. They motivate me to get on here and talk about something and just give my 3 cents because I happen to be activated. And if you don't know what that means, well, you got to study yourself. It's about your genetics. It's about DNA. There's a portion of your DNA called junk DNA, real quick. The European or whoever believes that that portion is called junk DNA because it is inactive and they don't understand or know what it does. Well, this is what I'm going to tell you. That portion of your genetics becomes active at a certain time, but only if. And if you can get to where you are supposed to be, which is beyond where you're stuttering, then you will have access to yourself. Period. That's the best way I could explain it. And they call that being awakened or activated because that part of your genetics are now activated and your connection with the ancestors is stronger. So now your magic is turned up. You can do what you want. This is an advanced understanding though. So going back to MLK. So I started then thinking about Black Lives Matter and why they used to call him a communist and how it's all connected. The reason they used to call Martin Luther King communist, first of all, you know, the name was related to the energy. We know that. They did all this on purpose. But not only that, the movement was not for the people necessarily, for the betterment of the black people. It just wasn't. It was more so for peaceful of the country, right? It was more so to quiet down the country. That's more so what Martin Luther King was about. This is why you had Malcolm X as well, right? So you have Professor X, you have Xavier, right? Professor X, and then you have Charles, whichever one was which, Magneto. You guys get what I'm saying. That was also made from these guys. If you don't know that, look that up. The people that make these things are all enthusiasts and fascinated with us. Everybody's fascinated with us. You are everything. Okay? So this is why Malcolm X was important, because he didn't believe in what Martin believed. He didn't believe in his approach. What was wrong with Martin's approach? Martin's approach was simply too peaceful and too at the government, too Marxist, right? And this is why he was called a communist. Because if you, let me tell you what a communist is, first of all. Actually, let me give you what a Marx is, all right? So a Marxist, this term comes from a man named Karl Marx from Germany, another German, right? So you got to understand, these people were socioeconomic engineers, man. They came up with ways to control and move the people. That's what this is all about. So when they name your black leader after them, they trying to show you something, but you can't see it. And those that see it have to go to the other side just to be alive, right? Have to become Malcolm. They have to become the monster that is willing to do anything, any means necessary, right? So now we can really further understand why Malcolm had to exist, and it was really because Martin existed. It was not really opposition. It was complementary, but it was being able to be perceived as two separate things, right? And this is very important. So Martin being considered a communist or a Marxist, the Marxist approach is this from Karl Marx. It's a socioeconomic analysis, right? So it's how they perceive the people, but here's the thing. The calculation of how they perceive us uses something called historical materialism. So, what does that mean? They judge you by what you got. So basically, they'll say, okay, black people are from this time to this time, and they'll say, we still haven't came up yet, right? So they'll start getting everybody together, getting all in the streets, doing all this marching and movement stuff, and it's all in the name of we haven't came up yet. What the heck is going on? We need to change the system. We need a movement. And I get that. And a lot of people saying, man, that's great. That's what we need. Okay, to an extent, but here's where you're being fooled because that is the definition of Marxism. What is the problem with that? Well, just like Black Lives Matter. And so when I was watching this Martin Luther King documentary, it made me understand that Black Lives Matter is a personification of Martin Luther King. So the BLM is the MLK. And you might not understand this, but this is exactly what's going on. This is coded knowledge. This is metaphysics. Okay? So to Black Lives Matter is led by a woman who is a self-proclaimed Marxist. So Black Lives Matter is in effect a Marxist movement. That's why it exists on different continents and in different areas of the countries. It's just the way it is set up. It's not what a lot of people think it is. They think it is a movement for the betterment of black people. It is not. It is, but it isn't, right? Because Marxist organizations like Black Lives Matter, be careful what you attach yourself to because they will be watching you, monitoring you, and labeling you. And when the shit hit the fan, they come into your house too, okay? So watch what you post, watch what you do. Stop joining groups. Join your family, all right? So Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. Marxism is a group of people basically, they go against the government and they go against organizations and systemic racism and stuff like that. Yeah, that's cool and yeah, it exists, but that is not the problem. Systemic racism is not the damn problem. Look, to address systemic racism, you got to address why you want to be involved in their systems. You got to ask yourself, why don't we just make our own system? So until somebody can really answer that for me, I'm not really buying into the systemic racism in that way. Okay? Yes, it is something that keeps us from moving forward as quick as we need to, but at the same time, the way around it is to lean on our own people. So I don't want to hear too much about that. Okay? Let's talk more about the solution side. All right? So, Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. The woman that says that she created, which we know was approved by the government. And that's what you got to understand. They got to give you a controlled opposition, people. You're joining a controlled opposition. This is a political movement, Black Lives Matter. You should already know your life matter. Who are you saying that to? That's weird. You look stupid and you look like you don't have control of your own life and you look like a damn victim. You look stupid. You're out there screaming like somebody's going to hear it and change everything. Well, whoever that is, you're giving them too much power, okay? There's no body behind the curtain. There's no Oz. You turn the curtain over, it's going to be you. You're going to be real disappointed for all the damn time you wasted on the journey. Now you can just wake the hell up, right? So look up some of her interviews. She says, yes, I was trained to be Marxist since I was a kid, man. This was put on me and I follow it. And here's the danger of Marxism. It goes at the system, but it does not turn the mirror to the black people. This is why I don't agree with it. It doesn't say, hey, black people, look at your damn self. What can you be doing to not get shot? What can you do? Look, I'm not agreeing with what's happening, but what you got to understand is that you can do something besides try to play the hard role. And even if you want to be hard, just be smarter. Damn. You don't even know the laws. You can't even quote anything. So don't tell me your life matters when you are in a system that is governing you by laws and you haven't even taken the time to understand this stuff. Stop screaming and start reading. Put the sign down, pick a book up, right? That's how I feel. So, again, she's a part of this, and I'm more for turning the mirror on black people. I turn it on myself, my family. This is how we get better, man. This is how we elevate. I'm an ex-gang member. I've been in jail before, not prison, it was just jail, but still, I did, 3-4 months in there, just being a knucklehead. I've always owned what I've done, and I've always done things with a clear mind. I wasn't ignorant out there. I was out there, but I wasn't ignorant. I was very intelligent. I just wasn't well taken care of, so I was out there. So I say that to say you create your own path at the end of the day. Your hardships become your strengths. If you spend too much time complaining, then you're wasting time where you could have been creating a solution. That's simple and plain, and you can't argue that. Period. So I'm gonna go over these next couple of things, and I'm gonna get off of this. So I wanted to make that connection between Martin Luther King, what he was trying to do, and how it was perceived as communistic. Malcolm had to exist as the other side to say, no, Negro, you don't need to participate in any of the white man's systems. To him, to you, he should be like a devil. Now, can you understand this? This was the energy that he had to try to give you to put that in the right perspective for your mind's sake, okay? So he had to be the antagonist to Martin. This is the only way this would work. That is balance. Okay? Stop choosing sides and see them both and understand why they're at odds. So Malcolm believed that the black man had no place in any of the white man's systems. He should look at himself, take care of his family, and worry about himself. I totally agree with that. In this day and age, I do agree with that. Now, here is where we are. We're in their systems. So we got to be where we at right now because you got to be in your now, right? But that doesn't mean that you sacrifice all your thoughts and energies into that. This is balance, people. It's not easy. You got to go to work, but still have that work for myself mentality all day. So these are the things that if you do simple things like meditate, stop eating the meat, do different things, watch less TV, read more, write more, journal more, think more, dream more, like all this stuff, this is how you make the change that you need. Other than that, you're going to be spinning your wheels and complaining in the streets with a damn sign, trying to convince somebody else that your life matters. That's weird. So again, I was talking about Marxism. I also want to talk about socialism, capitalism, and then racism. I'm going to wrap it up with that. So you hear a lot of people say, well, communists, we now know that that is linked with Marxism, right? This is the approach to go at the government. That's why the government is against it, because they are the damn government. I'm going to show you everybody's position so that you can understand the argument. Now let's move on to socialism. Socialism is a political, social, and economic philosophy combined. So this is a philosophy. So you got people that don't believe in knowledge, but they're following things that deal in philosophy, right? So socialism is political, it is social, and it is economic. And it is all the philosophy of all three combined into this Zen energy that we are supposed to be using the proper way. Now, why is this a dangerous thing? Because this is why people fight and are separated. You see? Because the people, right, which is the social aspect, remember, we're still inside of the body of socialism. So inside of that, we have the people, the social aspect. They're arguing that the political, the government aspect has too much power over the economic, the shared aspect. This is fucking stupid. So you got to understand positions and how they set things up for your ass to be in there like a ball of energy in a rhetorical argument, creating this blast that they just eating every day. You wake up drained, they wake up wealthy. See, this involves everybody. This was set up to be hard to govern as a system. But all of these systems I'm going to talk about are being used at the same time. Why do we have to have socialism, guys? We have to have this. Why? Well, do you invest in the stock market like I do? That is socialism. To have access to the stock markets and how the companies make money and not work for them is a part of socialism. So the government has to be involved with the economic to regulate it, so to speak. This is why we're doing cryptocurrency, because it is deregulated. Now do you see? We're trying to pull away from socialism and create this other thing that is economic and social and less political. Now you guys can probably understand why they are against Cryptocurrency. Let's move on to capitalism. Capitalism promotes private ownership of corporations and businesses and the production of what makes those corporations and business function, right? The production of all that is based on labor for exchange of money so that the entity can make profit. That is the formula, right? So that is capitalism. And once again, we say, well, we don't need to be, and I'm sure y'all have heard this, in a capitalistic society, blah, blah, blah. But wait a minute, didn't you just take your ass to work? Hold on now. So this is what I mean. We're in something that we have to understand exists the way that it does so we do not pollute our own energies by just misunderstanding this whole thing. The capitalism is what allows you to go and create an LLC and pay yourself because now you're getting paid for your own labor. So would you say we need capitalism? Seems like it. So we have socialism. We've agreed we need that, but in a new body involving the cryptocurrency. We've already talked about Marxism, which is an attack on the government, which will also I guess, help to lessen the political side of socialism at some point. We have talked about capitalism, which is the only way you're getting paid and paying your bills that you've agreed to pay through a capitalistic society. You don't want that, so you got to stop supporting it. It's going to be tough, but that's the answer to that. Or else, deal with it in the now, right? Figure it out and maneuver a little bit smarter. Do some more reading, do some more research. Now, last one, let's talk about racism. Let's talk about racism. We have all these isms. So I wanted to bring up, for the last one, the big ism, the racism, right? A lot of people are misunderstanding about this thing as well. Now, just to kind of give you the textbook, racism is the belief that groups of humans possess different behavioral traits corresponding to physical appearance and can be divided based on the superiority of one race over another. That is absolutely fucking true. So, black people, to say that racism don't need to exist and I don't believe in racism, you sound stupid as hell, because that's like saying you don't believe that you're any better. See, what's happened is they've taken it and flipped it. So because of the media and everything else that can be a overwhelming force and kind of tell you that you're not as good, every year talk about slavery. They push this stuff called critical race theory in the schools, where they constantly want to tell the kids, hey, white kids, you're oppressors. Hey, black kids, you're slaves. Critical race theory, look it up. I do not agree with it. It has no purpose except to create the misunderstanding of racism that has to exist anyway. Because the fact of racism in the true light is that there are some people that have other abilities and better abilities if you got to sit there and try to compare them. Let's start with who can be outside for longer than the other. I mean, hey, shit, that's a big one. So, so then it goes to say this may also mean prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against other people because they are of a different ethnicity. So this is the part they're choosing to add to racism. Understand that. These are what they call modern variants of racism. Social perceptions of biological differences between people. That's not real. That part of it is not real. That's like buying a real comfortable bed and putting a tore up sheet on it. Take that sheet off. The bed is good. The bed needs to be there, right? So I just wanted to make sure y'all realize these things, how they relate, these isms, how they relate to what's happening now, why the market's going up and down every time Biden says something, who's telling the truth, who's trying to fool you and have you in the streets when you could be at home in front of your computer using your brain and making money, right? in this socialistic society. But you would rather be in the streets rooting for Karl Marx and his socioeconomic theories, to point the finger only at those who oppress us, which always marks you as the permanently oppressed, which defeats the purpose of capitalism. Because why would a black person start a business when they continuously see themselves as the oppressed and they feel like they need to be given something by the government? Gimme, 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 because you have done me so dirty. You see how that kind of hurts us? And while we have hoods and while we rep hoods and while we happy there and while we satisfied being hood rich, people in the hood that want to get out and can't because of the acceptance, the wide acceptance of the people that are there and the majority that don't want to leave. The story of our people, man, the vision that we have within our culture, it's huge. So anyways, I'm going to end it with that. I guess this is the ism episode. I don't know what I'll call this yet, but yeah, you got it. You got it when you see it. So I kind of like to freestyle the episodes, man, and just when I feel uplifted, to just jump on. I like to trade my stocks early, give myself time in the day to record, then go get my daughter from school. So I'm trying to reorganize my schedule and stick with it. So let's go. Get this knowledge, get this information. I hope you got something from it. If you did, please pass it to somebody. Look up the stuff I said, man. Verify it. Make sure I'm telling the truth. Make sure I'm doing my due diligence on what I'm saying I know. Because it's all about gnosis and not just having faith. Right? That can get you killed. Until next time, my 3 cents. I'm out.